Thank you once again for being Locked On Cougars, your first view and or listen of the day. Hope you guys are doing well out there. All right, BYU basketball's got a big week ahead of it, and they're going to be playing in the Rady Children's Invitational, taking on Ole Miss on Thanksgiving Day, 3:30 p.m. Mountain Time on FS1. It'll also obviously be on BYU Radio, and then they will play the winner of Purdue and or NC State on Friday as a result of whatever happens on Thursday. These two games, combined with their road trip to Rhode Island next week to take on the Providence Friars, comprise easily the best three games of BYU's non-conference slate. Two of them officially neutral site, the other a road game out there in Providence, Rhode Island. And the more I read into mock drafts, read stuff up on you guys like Egor Demin, by the way, Egor Demin saying that he doesn't really necessarily, he's not focused on the Big 12 championship. He's calling it the big championship, meaning the NCAA tournament title. If he can lead BYU to that kind of glory, he will be an all-time legend in just one season of BYU, because at this point, does anybody really expect realistically for Egor Demin to spend more than one season here at BYU? I sure don't. But he's got a big opportunity this week. And guys like him, Cannon Catchings, I think Mihailo Bošković. I also look at guys like Dallin Hall just returning from injury. This next three-game stretch is going to tell us a lot about this BYU team, and I think more importantly, what their prospects are in the Big 12 Conference. BYU is considered to be a middle-of-the-pack Big 12 team this season, and that's not a bad place to be because, once again, this is truly the best basketball conference in the country. There's just literally zero doubt about that fact. But I think more importantly, as BYU looks towards the Big 12 slate, you need to have some absolute studs emerge to kind of be your go-to guys. I think Egor Demin has already established himself as one of those guys. I think Dallin Hall absolutely is one of those guys, but he has not shown it quite yet this year. But he's only had one game. He played against Mississippi Valley State. What can you really show? The nice part was he came back and showed no ill effects of that toe injury he's been dealing with. I also want to see a guy like Cannon Catchings. Can he continue to kind of hone his game and really show more than just being a spot-up shooter for this BYU team? He showed a lot of that against Mississippi Valley State, but once again, MVSU and a team like Ole Miss that was ranked earlier this season, that's a whole different level of basketball and opponent you're going up against. Can you have that same type of performance against the Rebels than you did against the Delta Devils? That's a great question mark. Same thing for a guy like Egor Demin. He is considered to be right now a bona fide top 5 pick, if not a top 3 pick in this NBA draft. That comes with a lot of people scrutinizing your tape and your performance literally game by game. You can't afford to have an off game because people all of a sudden be like, you know what? See, told you he can't do it. Ole Miss is going to cast a really, really big spotlight on a guy like that. And the spotlight that he is going to be cast upon him, it will also obviously glare on other guys on his team. Can a guy like Dallin Hall show what he's capable of? Can Fousseyni Traore, who's a senior looking to make an impact in his final season as a Cougar and boost his professional prospects, can they all go out there under that spotlight and show what they're capable of? That's a great question. I'm still concerned that BYU isn't fully ingrained with regards to the pill and switch defense that Will Voigt has implemented. I think given time, it's going to be a very nice thing for BYU to have in their arsenal because it looks very much like a modern defense should look, especially at the collegiate level. But the concern is, will it hold up against, like, once again, a team like Ole Miss and then potentially Purdue or NC State, and then obviously a road game at Providence? BYU hasn't played a true road game yet this year. That Providence game is going to be the only true road game of the non-conference slate. So there's a lot to be learned about this BYU basketball team over this next week and change. And I, for one, I'm excited to see how they do because I think guys like Egor Demin, they know what they're going up against. This is a kid that was playing professional basketball really without the professional status next to his name last year for Real Madrid. Same thing for Mihailo Bošković. Cannon Catchings, he's played for Overtime Elite. He has played against some of the best prep players there are in this country. Okay, can you take it to the next level now? You've had 5 games to really kind of get a feel for how the college game is going to go. The officiating, the overall tenor of the game with 2 20-minute halves. You have those media timeouts every 4 minutes and change. They've had time to adjust to how college basketball operates here. Now, can you go out there and, once again, kind of show that you can go to the next level and play against top-tier talent and shine on that stage? If they can do that, it's going to be absolutely awesome to see because that means BYU is going to be very much in the mix when it comes to the Big 12 conference slate. Now, if they falter, well, that could raise some concerns. Maybe the defense is off. They're not able to shoot, obviously, away from the Marriott Center. There's a whole litany of things that could come out of this 3-game stretch. But I've got fingers crossed. And I think a best case scenario for me, I'm just speaking frankly, is a 2-1 record. If they're 2-1, I don't care where the losses and wins come from. If they're 2-1 after this 3-game stretch, I'd consider that a success. And by the way, if they're 2-1 and they go into obviously follow this 3-game stretch and they're sitting there now at 7-1, there's a very good chance BYU's ranked potentially inside the top 20. They're one spot out of the top 25 in this week's AP poll, so they're not far out. They've steadily kind of risen through the ranks here, and they're so close to being actually in the rankings. And I think a win, maybe a split this weekend at the Rady Children's Invitational down there in San Diego probably gets them ranked because, once again, Ole Miss was ranked at one point. Purdue, I think, is ranked with a 6th. I might be wrong on that, but they're nationally ranked inside the top 10. And NC State, BYU knows about NC State. They gave them everything they could handle last year in Las Vegas. So there is a really, really strong chance, even if BYU goes 1-1 this weekend ahead of that trip to Providence next week, they could be ranked when they head out to Rhode Island to take on the Friars out there. So there's a lot to play for BYU. There's just zero if and or but about it. And more importantly, there's a lot for guys like Mihailo Bošković, once again, Egor Demin, Cannon Catchings, and you can go just down the list. Dawson Baker, who else? And also, I'll also add this. Hopefully, get Keba Keita back at some point during this stretch. I've heard anything from he could be back for these games this week at the Rady Children's Invitational in San Diego. He could be out until the Big 12 conference season begins. I've heard all different types of time frames about his availability. If he's able to get back on the court and he can play right away, go for it. Keba Keita completely changes BYU's look, especially defensively, with his athleticism. He's also a vertical lob threat in the offense that I love me some Foose. I love me some Mihailo Bošković, but they do not have the overall hops and athleticism that Keba Keita possesses. And I think his reinsertion to the lineup be a really, really nice thing to have if you're a BYU fan. So there you go. Some thoughts on BYU basketball as they get ready for, like I said, a very important 3-game stretch. Maybe the really only look we get this non-conference slate of what life in the Big 12 is going to look like come December 31st when Big 12 play begins against Arizona State and obviously ensues for the next 2 months and change. All right, so there you go. That's what I got for you guys on this Tuesday edition of the podcast. Once again, I appreciate all the feedback. I really do appreciate you guys keeping it civil, but at the same time, I welcome disagreement. It's what I live for. It's what I do in sports radio. That's why I do this podcast. I live for the banter and the back and forth, and I can appreciate every single one of you who weighed in with your thoughts. And once again, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. And as always, thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.